Kalkadosh Boker Or, Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Yomi Daf Kavchet Amud Aleph 28a1. We were talking about Ashkechan Avot Lebanim Vonim Leavot. We were talking about a Mekor from the Pasuk that our Avot are going to be Pasul for the children, and the children are going to be Pasul for their fathers. V'kol Sheken Avot La'adadi, and all the more so for brothers to themselves, right? That they're not going to be able to come and testify for themselves, right? Because if it's going to be, right, the banim which are coming from the kocham is going to be pasul laid, so koshken, the brothers themselves, is going to be pasul. Banim lemalan. But how do you know, right, that you cannot testify about your cousin, which is the banim to banim, meaning not the avot with the avot, but rather it's the banim with the banim. So it's obviously benedodim, which are their cousins. So says the Gemara, im ken if so lichto kra, the pasuk should say lo yumetu avot al ben. My banim, what does it say banim? That even the fact that it didn't say lo yumatu avot al ben, meaning the father for the son, so for the fact that it said in plural, it's teaching that even from the banim to the banim, which means from the children to the children, which are bnei dodim, it's also going to be prohibited. 28a1. Okay, kavchet amud aleph. So says the Gemara, Ashkecham banim la'adade. We just found banim to the with each other, right? Banim le'alma minalan. How do we know that other types of family members, right, that it's going to be prohibited? So he says, how do we know that it's going to be pasul? So Amar Rabbi Merchama svarahu. It's a svara. Kedetanya, as we learned in a Braita, en adim nasim zomim ad shizomu shnehem. Okay, so this Braita comes and it says that edim zomemim are not going to become, right, zomemim, until both of them become zomemim. Now, visal kadaita, now if you're going to tell me, right, banim le'alma kesherim, right, now if you're going to tell me that banim, and obviously, other krovim or whatever it is going to be banim le'alma, is going to be kosher, nimsa et zomem neherag be'edut achiv. So it comes out that an ed zomem is going to be killed with the edut of a family member. Right? Because every single person will be killed because of their family member. Because if it was going to be that he was going to be muzam by himself, he wouldn't have been killed. So it cannot be that edut, right, would be mechayev his family member, just like the pasuk says, shebarim lo yimetu al pi zeh. So Elmaleh Rava comes and he says, v'litamech, and according to your reasoning, had etznan, that which we learned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah, shlosha achim ve'echad mitzaref imahen. Imagine right now you have three edim, three brothers, that they're coming and they're testifying about a person, about a field. One person could come and be mitzaref with each of them, right, for the edut. What does that mean? Right? You need edut of 3 years chazakah. Imagine right now, I have three brothers. Each brother testifies about 1 year. Somebody else could combine with each brother, and then they could testify about this person. So it's going to be a testimony of three different brothers, because of 3 different years, one of them coming with them. Harelu shalosh eduyot. It's considered 3 different eduyot, right? But it's considered vehen edut achal hazama. But it's considered one edut for hazama, which means that if you're going to come and one of them is going to be, right, made into zomemim, they're not going to pay, right, until kasher zamam. They're not going to pay until all 3 become disqualified. Nimtza, it comes out. Ed zomem mishalem mamon be'edut achiv. That an ed zomem is going to pay money with the edut of his brother. Ella barader hazama me'al makati. Right, the hazama is coming from somewhere else. Hachanami, so to here we're talking about hazama me'al makati, which means that at the end of the day, it's coming from the ones which are making them edim zomim, and not because of the brothers. So if so, you cannot say that ki'ilu the mekor is because of kasher zamam. Because at the end of the day, it comes out that there are certain cases where they are joined together to do with the yitchayvut of kasher zamam, right? Which means that here you're using every single brother separately, right? Because he's combining with another brother. He's combining with another person in order to testify in every single year. So imagine, we had a family house. I lived in it year 1, my brother year 2, and my other brother year 3. Now, we were all witnesses that the guy there was the neighbor. He was there for 3 years. So now I couldn't testify about all 3 years because I wasn't there for 3 years. But I was there for year 1. My brother was there for year 2. And my other brother, year 3. So we could combine with, let's say, with Dominique, we could combine, right? That all of a sudden that we're going to combine that, so I'm with him on year 1. My brother with him, year 2, because he was the other neighbor on the other side, right? And the third brother for year 3. Now he says, even though that works, right? And but he says to do with hazama, it's all one testimony, which means that I will never pay, because it says in the Mishnah, you don't pay until yazmu shnehem. Meaning, let's say you made miyazomem, but not the eda sheni. So you cannot come and you do not obligate money unless both of them become right. So therefore, right, what it's not getting away with it. You cannot do it until both of them are a thing. It's a rule, right? So therefore,
so if one is corrupted when the other one no, the corrupted one got away with it.
It's not that he's getting away with it. He has to wait. It's pending until the other thing happens. It's just like everything else, right? So which means that it becomes that you're waiting until it's going to happen. Now, if they make the other one into a zomem, so obviously he's going to pay. If they're not, so they're not. Why? Because it's a rule in kasher zamam. Kasher zamam has to be done to both of them because they're both together in the same plot. It cannot be that it's only done to one of them. But I only succeeded in getting one. Fine, get the other one. But until you don't get the other one, it's nothing.
3 years anyway. So wouldn't you have to get this memo on all 3 years?
But that's what he's saying. That means he's saying that since I need all of them are considered one group for hazama, I would have to make every single group zomemim. That's what he's saying. It's edut achat. Yes, it's edut achat for hazama. That's what it says. Vehen edut achat hazama, meaning it's 3 different testimonies, right? Because if you're not going to say 3 different testimonies, so then what's going to happen is you don't have the brothers. But it's one testimony to do the hazama, which means that just like the general rule is that you never pay until you make both of them edzomems, right? So to here you're never going to pay, right? It's going to be considered
shorter because if it's one partner.
So he says, Ella rather, in Ken, if so, yeah, lichtov kra, so then the pasuk should have said, uben alavot, right? Inami, or it could have said, vehem alavot. So what does it mean now, ubanim? Shafilu banim le'alma. What does that mean exactly, afilu banim le'alma? It means to say, right, that even banim, right, in general is going to be like that. So says the Gemara, ashkechan krove ha'av, but that's only by the family members of the father. How do you know about the family members of the mother? Because until now, we're always talking about, right, the avotel and the banim. We never spoke about the mother's side. So he says, right, like this. He says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, avot trezimne. What does that mean, avot trezimne? Right? It means, since it says twice, avot, so the extra one time, and that's what it says here, if you don't need it for krovei ha'av, teneu inyan lekrovei ha'em. So then you're going to come and you're going to put it for krovei ha'em. So says the Gemara, ashkechan, this you actually found, lechova. What does it mean, lechova? This says it's something actually for the negative. What does it mean for the negative? Because it says in the pasuk, lo yimetu avot al banim, right? And that's going to be lebechayev mita. But lezechut menalan. How do you know, though, that it's going to be for zechut? What does it mean, zechut? Which means that it's also going to be pasul, even for the zechut. Meaning, I would have said like this, maybe only for the negative they can't do that. But for the positive, maybe they could. So he says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, yumetu. Also, it's extra. Yumetu is written extra. Therefore, if you don't need it for the testifying for the negative, right, which is to do with the chiyuv mita, so therefore he says, so you're going to place it in also for the zechut for anything else as well. Which means the fact that we actually learned it twice, just like we had the avot twice, we have the yumetu twice. So even if it's not going to be for mita, even if it's going to be for stam, the exact same halacha would apply. So says the Gemara, ashkechan didei nefashot. Fine, that's what didei nefashot. Didei mamonot minala. Because this entire pasuk was lu yumetu avot. That's all didei nefashot. Whoever told you to do it didei mamonot. So the pasuk says mishpat echad yelachem mishpat hashveh lekulam. When it says mishpat echad yelachem, that means it's one mishpat, right? Which is the same thing, same halachot apply, whether it's going to be dinei mamonot or dinei nefashot, right? It's going to be the exact same halacha. So Amar Rav comes and he says, Achi Abba lo ya'id li hu beno v'chatano, v'afani lo ya'id lo ani beni v'chatani. So it comes out that according to what we just mentioned now, I cannot come, right? And therefore, Achi Abba, which is my uncle, cannot come testify, right? Lo ya'id li hu. So he cannot testify for me, not him, not his son, or not his son-in-law. Except for my uncle. So my uncle, it cannot be him, he himself, the uncle cannot do it. It cannot be the cousin, which is his son, or his son-in-law, because it's basically my cousin's husband, right? But basically the son-in-law. Ve'afani, Simcha will reply for me. I cannot testify, lo aid lo, I cannot testify to him, not ani, not my son, and not my chatan. So says the Gemara, v'amai, why? Have shlishi barishon. He says, ha'av, right, ve'achiv, are rishon barishon. Haben, klape aviv, uklape dodo, is sheni barishon. Ubno, his son, right, or the chatan with the dod, is going to be shlishi barishon. The anan, and for us, is sheni b'sheni. Is going to be sheni b'sheni, right? So he says, which is basically two cousins. So right, tanan. The sheni barishon, the same halacha will apply to sheni barishon tanan. Shlishi barishon lo tanan. So therefore, we only taught a sheni barishon is going to be a problem, but not a shlishi barishon. So says the Gemara, "V'amai why havele shlishi barishon?" He comes and he says it's a shlishi barishon, right? And he says if it's going to be right now a shlishi, right, barishon, he says va'anan, and we are going to be sheni b'sheni, a sheni b'sheni, right? Which means the two cousins are considered sheni b'sheni, right? V'sheni barishon, right? We learned sheni barishon, but we didn't learn shlishi barishon. So says the Gemara, what does it mean now, chatano, right? He says, the Ktanim Matnitin that we learned in the Mishnah, it means chatan beno, which is basically of the che'av, right? Which is basically, he says over here, meaning we thought at the beginning, chatano, right? The kavanah was chatano of achi'av. Now we're not talking about that. It's chatan beno of achi'av, which means that the Mishnah is going to be posel, right? The Mishnah is going to be posel, chatan beno shel achi'av shu shlishi. Okay, velitni ben beno. So he says, so why don't you just teach ben beno? So he says, minta agav orche kamashmalan the baal ki ishto. Here we're learning something which is agav orche. What is agav orche? Baal ki ishto. What does that mean now? Baal ki ishto. Baal ki ishto means right. The husband, right, that means the wife and the husband share the same. So in this picture, which is going to be the kirva b'derga rishona, here you have Baal ki ishto v'isha keba'ala, which means that here you have the father and the mother, okay, and obviously the Baal ki ishto and isha keba'ala, so therefore obviously it would mean a stepmother or a stepfather, meaning that, you understand, meaning ishto bezivug shani or right ba'ala bezivug shani, and then you have the same thing, the children. So you have the wives or the husbands. Then you have the next one, which is going to be the wives and the husbands. And then you have the next one. So each one is again a different darga, rishon, sheni, shlishi. But again, ishto bebala. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, right? Ela hadetani Rabbi, that which Rabbi taught, shmone avot, that there's 8 fathers, which are 24 psulim. Hani tlatin v'tartin hava. So it says it's really be'emet, it's 32. It's not going to be 24, right? He says it's going to be, because you have to add in 8, right, of the bnei banim. So he comes and he says, Ela leolam, but really be'emet, chatano is mamash. So he says, V'maikales, why is it written chatan beno? Kevin de me'alma ka'ati, since he's coming from the outside, kedor acher dami. It's ki'ilu, it's considered another door. Right, and therefore, right, what he's trying to teach us is that even a shlishi is going to be pasul according to this. Okay, so he says, "Yachiv so, havale shlishi b'sheni." It's considered a shlishi b'sheni, and Rav said that it's going to be kasher shlishi b'sheni, right? So a shlishi and a sheni would be kosher, which means you have a nin to a neched. Can your nin testify about your neched? That's the question. But that's a shlishi b'sheni. So he says, Ela Rav da Amar, but rather Rav holds like Rabbi Elazar. Titania was learned in a Braita, Rabbi Elazar Omer, Keshem she'achei Abba lo ya'ili, hu uvno v'chatano, kach ben achi Abba lo ya'ili, hu uvno chatano. So here it's written in Furash, and even a shlishi b'sheni, which is going to be beno v'chatano shel ben adod, right, leben dod acher, is also going to be pasul. So from here we learn, it's kal v'chomer, that a shlishi b'rishon is going to be pasul. If right now shlishi b'sheni is pasul, obviously shlishi b'rishon. Ve'akati and still have a shlishi b'sheni. Ve'Rav achshar, but Rav said that it's going to be kosher shlishi b'sheni. So says the Gemara, Rav Sav lekavate bechad or palig bechad. Rav holds like Rabbi Elazar in one of the halachot that Shlishi Rishon is going to be pasul, but he argues in the other one, he holds Shlishi B'Sheni is going to be kosher. Okay? My tamad Rav, what's the reasoning of Rav? Tamar Krab, as the pasuk says, Lo yimetu avot al banim ubanim. What does that mean? L'rabot dor acher. The fact that it's coming to teach you like that, it's going to come to be marbeh another generation. Rabbi Elazar, and according to Rabbi Elazar, al banim amarachmana. It says al banim. So psule de'avot shadia banim. He says the psul of the avot is going on the banim. So Amar of Nachman says of Nachman, achi chamoti lo yayidli. The brother of my mother-in-law. So this is my wife's uncles. Again, ishto kegufo, so makes sense. Ben achi chamoti. Or, right, the nephew of my mother-in-law should not testify about me. Really. Ben achot chamoti loili, or the ben achot chamoti. Betana tuna baal achoto, the same halacha was baal achoto, baal achot aviv, baal achot imo, hen uvneim v'chatanen. Which means again, since we're talking about the ishto kegufo, so in all these cases, it's also going to be prohibited. Samaravashi ki avinam ki ula iba elan achi chamiv ma'u. What's the halacha to do with achi chamiv, the brother of my father-in-law? Or ben achi chamiv ma'u, or ben achot amiv. Samaleh tiditua. If you just told me achi v'achi avi v'achi mo hen uvnim chatanen, so for obviously it's also going to be pasul as well. Okay. Here, if I have. Okay, these are chorkim. So here you have the tabla. Yeah, this is the tabla. Okay, so if you want, I'll take a picture of this. I'll show you.
הרב, העדים, הרב, יש עדים בחתונה. הרב, יש עדים בחתונה.
כן.
ויש עדים שמעידים גם הם יודעים שהוא רווק, נכון? זה עדים אחרים, נכון?
כן.
אבל זה פה יכול להיות קרוב משפחה, נכון?
כן. שם זה דבר שהאבידה לגלויה. זה לא עדות גמורה. That's what you could ask even a woman. Yes. Yeah. Fine. So if you see over here, in this chart, right, that I just sent also on the chat, you see there the chatan and the kala. Okay, and then you have the father, the mother, right? Isha v'bala. You have then the brothers and sisters. You have sons and daughters, right? So all those people are going to be prohibited to come and to testify. So for example, if you just take now the chatan, so the chatan's father, so it says chatan and then it says abba. So the father is prohibited. But now it's not only just the father, it's the brother of the father, right? It's the sister of the father. So now obviously it's not the women. So it means the husband, bala, right? Right, right? That's what you keep on saying. And then it would be also their children, right? And continue. So that's why if you actually just take one. I'm not going to do the entire chart because it'll take too long. But look at one. Take the father, right? So you have the father there. So the father cannot testify for a son. It cannot be not only the father, it cannot be his brother or his brother-in-law, right? Which means basically your political uncle. That's what I was saying yesterday about the political uncle, which means it's not your blood uncle, right? It's the other one, right? You continue going. Ben Achav, right? Or Bat Achav. Remember, whenever it's written Bat, it's always Bala. That's why he keeps on saying the husband. Because the husband, Ishto, right? Kigufo, right? And Bala, right? Isha Kabala.
So the 8 categories that the Gemara is going to reference.
So these are all the categories that we're talking about. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Rav Ikla lemizban. Rav went to a certain place to purchase, right, gvile. Purchase klaf, right? Kavchet amubet, 28b. Ba mine, so they asked, Maushi ayid adam be'eshet churgo. Are you allowed to testify, right, for the eshet churgo? Churgo is the stepson, but now this is the wife of your stepson. So the truth is there's another chart of the stepsons, right, of the stepchildren, but I didn't print it out yet. If you give me a few minutes, I'll send you a picture as well. Besura amre, Besura says, Bal ki ishto. Bepumbadita amri, in Pumbadita they said, Isha ki bala. The Amar Ravuna Nachman Minayin sheisha kibala. How do we know that a woman is like her husband? Dichtiv irvat achi avicha lo tegale elish lo right elish to lo tikrav dodatecha hi valo eshet dodo hi. He says one second. What does it mean now? Dodatecha hi. It's eshet dodo. But he says no. Isha kibala. So therefore it's considered dodatecha. Meaning even though really be'emet it's not really your aunt. It's your aunt through marriage, but it's still calling it your aunt. Okay, and therefore that's how we learn it. Okay, next 2 dots. Balimo, hu bno chatano. Beno, hainu achiv. When we're talking about beno, it means the brother. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah comes and he says, Lo nitzrecha ela la'achia ach. Whenever we're talking about this, we're talking about achia ach. Rav Chasta comes and he says, Ba'achia ach amrule lo shmiya li yahachta Rabbi Yirmiyah. You didn't hear this of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Amar lehu, he says, Lo shmiya li. I didn't hear it. Klomar lo svirle. Meaning, many times we've already learned this. Sometimes they come and they say, "What? You didn't hear what he said?" He says, "No, I didn't hear it." What does it mean? It didn't mean he didn't physically hear. He didn't agree with it. So if he didn't agree with it, it was like, I didn't hear it. No, I'm not hearing it. Okay? So he says, Yihachi, if so, Hainu Achiv, that's the brother. So he says, Tana Achiv mina av, Iktani Achiv mina em. There's going to be 2 different psuls. Your brothers mitzad the father, and your brothers mitzad the mother. It's 2 different psuls. Okay? You have 2 different disqualifications. One mitzad the father, and one mitzad the mother. Okay? Next, he says, Amar Rav Chasta, says Rav Chasta, Avi chatan v'avi kala meidin ze lezeh. Consuegros. Right? That's in Spanish. In Hebrew, mechutanim. Okay? In French, you just have to say the no, bon père. Exactly. Your fils or your, exactly. Okay? Which means, right, the concept is that they're not really related. So me with my mechutan, so my chatan, his father. So me to him, there's no blood relationship there. So I could testify for him and he could testify for me. No. מחותנים.
הוא נשוי.
זה לא גיס. אתה, עוד פעם, מחותן. מה זה מחותן, כבודו? בעברית, מה זה מחותן?
חתן של...
לא אמרתי חתן. Si quieres, déjamelo ahí en una bolsa. Ok, sí, déjame todo y yo lo agarro. Yo lo agarro en un minuto. ¿Okay?
חתן לא...
Parents. מחותן, זה נקרא מחותן. זאת אומרת, יתרו עם עמרם.
חותן משה, היה זה, אבל...
עם עמרם.
עם עמרם, כן. כן, יתרו ועמרם.
זה מחותנים. זאת אומרת, הבן של יתרו, והבת של זה, אז הם אחד לשני, זה נקרא מחותנים.
That's חמה?
Which one?
That's חמה?
No, חמיב is the father-in-law. חמיב is the father-in-law. Here we're talking about מחותנים, which means... Right, exactly. The ילדים יחתנו. Those are okay, that's what we just said. He says over here, Amar Chasta, Avi Chatan Vavi Kala, father of the Chatan and the father of the Kala, they're allowed to testify about each other. Yeah, about each other, exactly. Velo damu la'adadi, right? Ela ki achla ledana. And it's only like the michseh v'chavit, which is not compared to the chavit. Meaning at the end of the day, right, they're not really connected. Say, okay, they're connected because their children are married to each other, but they're not connected to each other. Right? Another deen. A person could testify about his wife that she's engaged to him. It says, why? Because they're only considered family members when she's nisua, when she's married, full marriage. Amar Ravina comes and he says, one second. Lo amran, what are we talking about? To take out money from her, to obligate her into shavua. But to bring her money, lo mehaman, he's not believed. Why? Because it's going to come to him. Meaning, imagine right now, I'm going to come and I'm going to testify that somebody owes my arusa money. Obviously, I've got a conflict of interest. Why? Because that money, the second that I get married to her, it comes to my pocket. So I want that. So that you're not allowed to do. But if I'm going to testify against her that she has to make a shavua, or that she owes somebody else money, then you're kosher. No problem. That says the Gemara velohi, but it's not true. You're not believed. Why? My datach. You're not allowed to become an onen for her. Meaning, if she passes away, a person does not become an onen. If he's a kohen, he still does not do he does not become metameh metim. V'chen he, the same halacha applies to her. Lo nenev lo meta. She does not become a nene. She does not become meta. If she dies, he doesn't inherit her. Metu, if he dies, gova ketubata, she still gets a ketubah. So hatam bisherot ala rachmana. But there, right, the reason why it's not a proof is because it has to do with she'er, right, which means to do with tuma and all those things. Is it considered she'ero or not? So akati lo she'ero, it's not she'ero yet. Hacha mishum ikruv. Here it's because of kiruv dat. Here there is kiruv dat, meaning we have to go back to the reasoning. The reasoning is it's not considered your flesh and blood until the full marriage. But if you're going to tell me that you don't have kiruv dat, you're very close to her, right? This is your fiance. You're very, very close. So for the kiruv dat, you're already there. For to do with psule vedut, it's psule vedut. To do with inheritances, becoming tamemet, aninut, all that, no. Why? You're still not she'er. She'er has to be flesh and blood. That is only when it's a full marriage. But to do with kiruv dat, which is to do with edut, that you already have it. Okay? Next. Chorgo. Chorgo, we're talking about now a stepchild, right? Levado, right? So he says you're only pasul to him, right? Not to anybody else. So for example, to your stepson, right? Now again, there's no real connection, right? Because you just got married to the wife, right? But so you cannot testify to him, but everybody else is going to be fine. Rabbi Yosef says, Giso, right, which is again the husband of, right, which is basically a brother-in-law. What's a gis? A gis. Vetanya idach, Giso levado, but only it's a brother-in-law. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, chorgo. Rabbi Yehuda says chorgo. Maika, what does that mean now? Right? Which means that you cannot testify for your brother-in-law. But can you testify for your brother-in-law's brother? Ach shel hagis shelcha.
אח של גיסי, מה הבעיה? אני לא קשר איתו
נכון? No, because here we said why wouldn't you be able to? Because you're only family to your brother-in-law because he got married to your sister.
אח של גיסי, מה אני קשור אליו?
But you have nothing to do with the brother.
I thought the connections were stayed.
No, that's
אני
what we're
יכול
trying
גם
to say.
להתחתן עם האחות של גיסי.
You understand? So he says, my kaman, right? What are we saying? If you're going to tell me now, chorgo levado, vehu adin legiso. So he says, vatal besolem giso levado, vehu adin lechorgo. Ela matnitin diktani, right? Huh? But matnitin diktani giso, hu vno v'chatano mani. Who is it? It's not Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Yosef. Ela hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Chorgo levado. You're right. A stepson is only the stepson. Aval giso, but your brother-in-law, hu ubno v'chatano. You cannot have him, his son, but obviously his son is still, or the chatan. Rabbi Yosef lememer giso levado, aval chorgo hu ubno v'chatano is pasul. What we said, we're talking about Shmona Avot. He says, She'en 24, which is going to be 24 psulim. Keman, who does that go like? Lo Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. It's not going like Rabbi Yosef or like Rabbi Yehuda. Ela hachi kama. But rather, really, be'emet, this is what it means to say. Chorgo levado. The choreg is going to be by himself. But Giso is going to be hu b'no v'chatano. It's going to be pasul. And Rabbi Yossi is coming to say Giso is by himself. V'koshken chorgo. And our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the Braita is going according to Rabbi Yosef. So says Halacha, Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel, Halacha Rabbi Yosef. Halacha is like Rabbi Yosef. That he says that even by Giso, it's only by him, and not by any other family members. Okay? Fine. So now let's go. There was a shtar, right? Shtar matana, that was written, 2 gisim that they were signed on it. Savar Rav Yosef, lachshura. So Rav Yosef thought to make a kosher. Damar Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel says Rabbi Mashmuel, Halacha Rabbi Yosef. Elmaleh, Abaya comes and he says, "Mimai Rabbi Yosef matnin the machshav giso." How do you know that the Rabbi Yosef our Mishnah is actually being machshir in giso? Maybe it's Rabbi Yosef the Braita which is posel begiso. So he says, "Lo salka daitach." We're not actually thinking like this. Amar Shmuel says, "Kegon Ana u Pinchas." For example, me and Pinchas, de havina nache v'giseh, because we are brothers and also gisim, right? Which means 2 brothers got married to 2 sisters. So therefore, you have brothers plus brother-in-laws. Right? Everyone understood? One more time. 2 brothers getting married to 2 sisters. So they're brothers plus their brother-in-laws. Okay? So he says, Aval giseh de alma, but if it's a regular brother-in-laws, shaper dami, there shouldn't be a problem. So he says, Vedinma, kegon ana u pinchas mishum de giso kama. So he says, Elmaleh comes and he says, Zil kanya be'edeh mesira. Maybe we're going to buy with him mesira. Rabbi Elazar. B'amar Rabbi Abba says Rabbi Abba, modeh Rabbi Elazar mezuyav mitucho. Right? Rabbi Elazar is going to come and he's going to say it's mezuyav mitucho, which is going to be pasul. So Elmaleh comes and he says, Zil lo shavka lidot vinalach. He says they're not going to come and they're not going to let me because at the end of the day, they just proved that the shtar is going to be pasul. Okay? Fine. Next, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says, Amar Rabbi Tanchum says Rabbi Tanchum, Amar Rabbi Tavla says Rabbi Tavla, Amar Rabbi Bruna says Rabbi Bruna. Amar Rav says in the name of Rav Halacha, Rabbi Yehuda. The Halacha is going to be like Rabbi Yehuda. So he comes and he says like this. He says, when we're just going to say that the Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, he comes and he says, Rava Amar. Rava comes and he says, okay, Rava comes and he says, Rav Nachman, in the name of Nachman, En Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is not like going to be like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Chen Amar Rabbi Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan, En Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is not going to be like Rabbi Yehuda. So Ika Dematni Lahad Rabbi Chana Aha. So some people they wanted to just write on this. Et Zod Rash Rabbi Yochseg Lileh. This is what Rabbi Yochseg Lileh taught. Uvatai la Kohanim el Shofet Asher Yeh Bayamim Maim. V'chitalel datcha shadam olech etzel Shofet shelo yeh b'yamav. How could you go? Imagine right now I'm going to tell you I want to go to the Gaon Mevilna. Saying you're not living in the time of the Gaon Mevilna. How do you go to a Shofet which is not in the lifetime of the Shofet? So he says, Ela barather. It's somebody that he was close to you, and he became rachok, right? And therefore, when it says bayamim ahem, it means once upon a time. The halacha is going to be like Rabbi Yosef Hagilile. That basically that it's teaching you that if you are a person that is going to be karov and then became rachok, that it's going to be kosher. So bnei chamua de mor ukva, we're talking about the children of the chamiv of mor ukva. Okay, bnei chamua de mor ukva, krovim v'nitrachaku avu. They were family members, right? Why? Because the sister was the wife of Morukva, but then they became distanced, right? Atul Ledina, so they came in front of Adin. Amalu, he says, Psina lechu ledina, you're prohibited. Amru, he said, why? Rabbi Yehuda? He says, Ana maitina ligarta mimarava. We're bringing from a letter from Eretz Yisrael. The halachas like Rabbi Yehuda. Amalu, he says, Atu bekaba dekira davka bechu. He says, what? In a kav of Shava, I'm going to come and I'm going to separate. The only reason why I said your pasul is not because of kurva, it's because you guys don't listen to the judgments. Okay, and that's what you're going to be